as things kind of progressed, that's when somebody approached us on purchasing the Ford dealership. And at first I hit the roof. I was like, I'm not selling this. There's no way I'm going to give up my family business and everything else. And Eric was the one that peeled me off the ceiling and said, let's just give it a shot. Let's listen. It's worth a phone conversation. You don't have to say yes or no.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of FounderClosers. Here on this podcast, we focus on the idea of being an entrepreneur, being a founder, and a lot of the conversation is around revenue. Recently, over the past couple of months, I put a lot more interest in understanding a lot around the mergers, acquisitions, the types of business who want to be bought, types of business who want to be sold, all of those things. And for that reason, today we have a very special guest who can kind of give a lot of insight on that side as being a former business owner who's bought a business, who's then sold that business and now helps other companies do that, and then has a huge platform in which they're building on right now, which we're going to talk more about here in a second. Katie, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Yourself?
Doing fantastic. It's still a little cold. So for all my audience, you see me in a different place. I'm here in Virginia. It's been snowing since I've been here. I hate the snow. I'm ready to get back to Texas. I looked at the temperature app on my phone yesterday, and it was 60 degrees in Texas while it was 20 degrees here. And I had FOMO of being back in Texas and having on a t-shirt and not being freezing cold all day. But you're out in Vegas today, right?
I am today. Last weekend, though, I was in Montreal, and when we landed, it was minus 20 there Celsius, which is, I don't know, like 7 degrees, 5.
Yeah, you can throw it away. Just get rid of that part of the country or that part of the world. Just get rid of it. In my eyes, I have no interest in going there because I hate the cold. But you were in Montreal because your headquarters is out there, right?
We were out there for a Christmas party. So with
Nice.
The mergers and acquisitions DSMA, they have their annual Christmas party out there.
So Katie, I got to know a little bit about you, but for our audience who doesn't know us, tell us a little bit about kind of your journey. Like, we'll get into what you're doing today, but I think what's really always important is to know is what got you here to today. So short form version of your story, talk to us about how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, so was born and raised out in Denver, Colorado. My father owned and operated Mike Naughton Ford out there. He had the dealership for almost, 47 years. Wow. So grew up in the business. I mean, that from the time I was in diapers. That's all I knew was the Ford dealership. My grandfather was also in the business. He was vice president of Ford Motor Company, worked right alongside Lee Iacocca. So there's a whole lot of family history. My uncles all had dealerships across the U.S. Needless to say, I mean, that's just all I knew from day one. So it was an amazing experience. I went to school thinking I wanted to get into broadcasting. I wanted to be in radio and TV broadcasting. I initially thought I'd be one of the sports broadcasters on the sidelines of the NFL was my initial goal. I got to school and realized real quickly that I didn't think that was the path that I wanted to go. I mean, I liked it, but I didn't think I was very good at it. And it didn't come naturally for me. So I finished my degree and, it was one that I didn't feel I needed to change majors because, most people don't ever do what they set out to initially do. And, I got into radio advertising for a bit, thought I would do that. And then it was kind of one of those revelations sitting, I've got this dealership right in front of me. I'm not giving this a chance. Why have I not ever really given it a fair shake? And so I decided to, approach my father, say, I want to come work for you. Of course, naturally put me in sales first and then, kind of moved around the dealership just like everybody else does. After working for him for several years, and I was in F&I at the time, he had a general manager that came to work for him that was actually a previous dealer and a friend of his in one of his 20 groups who suggested that I go to the NADA Dealer Academy in Washington, D.C. So enrolled, went to it. I showed up on my first day of class. It was me and pretty much 40 guys. I think there were 2 other women in the class. Yeah. I was 27 at the time, so super intimidating to walk into this room and really know the dealership, but not know the dealership operations, if that makes sense. I mean, that was a huge eye opener going in there. Anyway, so after going through the year-long program of that, working at my father's dealership, I actually did meet my now husband there in the classroom.
Wow.
And I always joke that it was like the Bachelorette in the car business, because
Sure.
with me and all the guys, so wasn't my plan, but that's just how it happened. So anyway, we did long distance for about 2 years. He was from Toronto, Canada, and I am down in Denver. So we did long distance. Finally got to a point of like, okay, what are we going to do this? Or are we going to move on? And I had a big, long talk with my father, because I had finally got to a point in the dealership where I had finally made a mark and kind of just earned his approval, if that makes sense. So I had a really tough decision to make. And he said, listen, go up to Toronto, try it out for 6 months. If it works, great. If it doesn't, that's fine. You can come back. I'll give you your job back and everything else. I said, okay, fine. So I went up there, and I never came back. So at our wedding, in fact, he joked that that was the biggest all-time backfire of his life, was sending me up to Canada. So anyway, fast forward a year or two, just for legal and immigration reasons, I wasn't allowed to work in a dealership. And then once I was a permanent resident up there, we both kind of looked at each other and said, maybe this is something we want to do. We want to invest in our own dealership and have our own operation. So that's when we enlisted the help of Fareed Ahmed over at DSMA. He had just started a company and was helping dealers buy and sell dealerships up there. So we approached him. He gave us a couple different opportunities. In fact, one was a big Ford store north of the city that we were looking at. Looked at all the numbers, analyzed the financial statements. It all made sense. We were trying to figure out how we were going to finance it. It was pretty pricey. Crunching all the numbers. Finally, we were getting ready to put an offer in, and one of the big groups came in and just offered like $1 million more than us. And it was
Sure.
like, okay, well, I can't, I mean, here we're like scraping pennies together to make this happen. It's not going to work. So we had to shift and pivot. We found a Kia dealership that was on the market. And at first, our noses were way up in the air with that brand. We didn't think that was going to be a fit.
What year was this, ballpark?
This was 2012.
Okay, makes sense.
So it was kind of in the...
It was on the uprise
it
at
was
that
on
point.
the up, but my husband comes from the Porsche world. So, like the
and
Porsche
even
and
worse,
Ford,
I'm
and
sure.
then you kind of like, oh, Kia, is that really what we want to do? But, at that point, it's, do you want to get in the game or do you not want to get in the game? And I had a great talk with somebody, a dealer friend of mine, that gave me great advice. He goes, Katie, I don't care what I sell as long as I can make some money. It doesn't matter what kind of badge it is. It's the car business, know? And it really kind of hit home. And I said, okay, fine. So we pursued the Kia dealership. We ended up, submitting the LOI and taking it there. So we closed on it the beginning of 2013, very early. I think it was February of 2013. So we were off to the races there. Like I said, all our trips were in the middle. We were there pretty much 7 days a week. It was one of the rare dealerships that was open 7 days a week.
And this was where? This was up in Canada, right?
This was up in Canada, in Mississauga, Ontario, really Toronto. It touched, almost touched the airport property.
Okay.
Up in Toronto. So the previous owner had opened on Sundays. It was one of their things. And when we came in, the staff were actually the ones that wanted to keep the dealership open on Sundays. So we kept it going, limited staff and all that. But anyway, so we had that for almost 10 years that we ran it. We went through a full renovation. We moved from one building to another. We took a Honda dealer and completely gutted it, renovated it with the new Kia brand standards. So that was a fun time to learn all about construction and reimaging and all of that. And then it was about 18, 19, my father called and said, listen, I need your help. He was getting sick and was having some struggles with operating the dealership. And so naturally, Eric and I ran down, flew down and met with them, met with Ford, met with everybody, and decided, okay, we're going to take over this operation as well. So for a couple years, we were flying back and forth, managing both locations. Mm-hmm. And to be quite honest, I don't think I saw Eric for 2 years because we were either one was operating the other, at one time. So it was,
This was how far into your
constantly.
marriage at that time?
Well, we got married in 2015. I guess 4 or 5 years into the marriage. I mean, we've been together since 2008, so it's been
Got it.
a
So
long
you've been
time.
together for
We
a
did
while.
everything
Yeah,
backwards.
I
The
hear you.
marriage was more of like we bought the business and all that before we were even engaged. So the
Oh,
marriage was
wow.
kind of like,
Okay.
all right, let's just do
Yeah.
this to satisfy everybody.
Yeah. I hear you. Okay, cool. I got what you're saying.
Um, yeah, so we were back and forth running that, and then we were on a flight every week, and
Wow.
then COVID hit.
Mm.
And so I was down in Denver when things were really happening, that very initial, like, PGA was shutting down in basketball tournaments. And I said, I better get up to Canada now because I'm not sure what's going to happen with the borders. So I did. And of course, as we know, everything shut down. So we were stuck up in Canada for about 3 months. And thank God we had kind of a management consultant that was helping us. He was more of a boots on the ground kind of GM type person helping us with the Ford store. So he was navigating that. And I got to tell you, that was one of the most stressful times in my life, was managing the two stores through COVID in two different countries, because everything kind of, I mean, as you know, it changed hourly on what you were supposed to do. And one country was a little bit more lenient than the other. And
Sure.
different rules and regulations that you had to follow, and trying to just manage that from one space was challenging. But anyway, so we got through that, and as things kind of progressed, that's when somebody approached us on purchasing the Ford dealership. And at first I hit the roof. I was like, I'm not selling this. There's no way I'm going to give up my family business and everything else. And Eric was the one that peeled me off the ceiling and said, let's just give it a shot. Let's listen. It's worth a phone conversation. You don't have to say yes or no today. So they said, okay, fine. So as the more we talked and everything and opened up the lines of communication, it just seemed to make more and more sense. And at the time, people were paying outrageous money for dealerships because they were coming off COVID, and, you were holding all the gross profit. And it's one of those where I kind of always questioned if maybe we were crazy for selling, because there was so much revenue coming in at the time. But it made sense, and it made sense for the whole family and my siblings and everything else. So we ended up selling that to the Champ Automotive Group in 2021, I believe it was. So that was done, moved on. My dad was getting sicker and all that stuff. So it was fine.
Makes sense.
Then we get back to the Kia dealership, and Eric and I kind of look at each other, and we were just burnt out by then. It was, we were fried from all the travel and all the stress, and, after the buy sell of the Ford dealership and everything. And we kind of looked and said, is this something that maybe we want to look at for Kia? And so that's when we went to Fareed and said, listen, maybe we're thinking possibly of selling. Is this, what's the market like up here? We know what the US market is, what's going on in Canada. So he invited us to his house for dinner. And it was one of those where, again, it was just kind of, we wanted to have a conversation. And if you ever meet Fareed and or know him, he's kind of like the Tasmanian devil, and he just is really super fast. So it was one of those dinners where, like, I thought I was going in just to have a conversation. I walked out, I was going to get a valuation on the dealership. We were going to list it for sale. We were going to come work for him at DSMA. We were going to potentially move to the US, open a Western office, and this whole thing. And we're driving home that night, and my head was just like, what happened?
I've had a couple of those experiences where I walk into a conversation so innocently thinking it's going to be this, and I leave that conversation and I call my wife and I'm like, I don't know what just happened. I have to pull over to the side of the road and just gather myself. I don't know what just happened. So I've been in that same seat before, for sure.
I mean, yes, like this was, I want to say October of whatever year it was, 22. And or 21 maybe. By March of 22, we had closed on the dealership. Like we had somebody who had purchased it. We went through the whole APA process, everything, and they had come in and purchased it. So we had the Dilawri Automotive Group buy us out in spring of 22.
when you do that as a seller of so my wife's a realtor. And so one of the things I was thinking about when you were talking about your potential attempt to buy the one property where that big group came in and made this monster offer.
Mm-hmm.
And then now when you're in the position of selling, is it all about the money, or is it the person you're selling it to that really plays a part in it? Because in a sense, I can imagine, Katie, that's a bit of your legacy, right? And you sell your store that you built up, you remodeled a facility, you built up, you put your name on it, you literally had your name on the advertising in the front of it, and now you sell that to another place. The highest bidder, I'm sure matters. I'm sure it matters for the bank account, but is it the most important thing, or is it a really weighed out thing for you?
No, that's actually a great question. And yes, it is a really weighed out question. It was extremely important for both locations. So like I told you, the Ford store,
I'd say maybe even more for your dad, right? Because of the length of time that it was in the family. And that was a little bit more of a difficult decision, I would guess, than the one that you and your husband did, for that period.
Yeah. You know what it was? And that's like when somebody wanted to buy it, it was like, that's not even an option in my mind. I'm not going to do that. So yes. And to be honest, Matt, some of the staff that were still there had seen me in diapers. Like they had been around that long. So that was difficult. Like you definitely wanted somebody to come in that was gonna treat the staff right and take over the legacy and honor what it was. And I got to tell you, the Champ Automotive Group was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, they are still amazing to this day. So we still hold the property. We still talk to them quite regularly. So, there's still a relationship there. They wanted to honor my father and do a full big article in the newspaper. And they were the ones that were, paying for it and putting it out and writing it. And so, yes, like fantastic relationship there. With Kia, it was different because we weren't necessarily approached one-on-one like that. What we did with Kia is DSMA went and put together a whole list of potential buyers that they thought would be interested in it. And so we had the autonomy to go through, or the authority to go through and really just kind of pick and choose. Do we want to sell to them? Do we not want to sell to them?
Okay.
And I will
like
tell
a
you
no-trade list in a sense in sports that way.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
And there was one that would have been a phenomenal player, I guess to say, would have probably, paid all the money and everything else. But I didn't feel good about how they would treat the staff. They were notorious for a lot of turnover and everything else in the market. And I just wasn't prepared to, hand my staff over. And there's still people that are still at the dealership today. I mean, they're there, and I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah, and I would imagine, as I'm thinking through it, like one of the big variables is the maintenance of your staff, and especially the leadership there, right? Like, because an ownership team, they take over a store, they probably have their own leaders. Hopefully, if they're a well-run organization, and you generally have to be in an acquisition mode, you're developing leaders, you're growing leaders, you're moving leaders up, and the acquisition of a new store creates a new opportunity for a new leadership role, a new leadership team. And a lot of times, for me, if I was acquiring a store, I'd probably want to bring in my own leaders. Very much wouldn't want to take over a leadership team that wasn't mine. Maybe I would integrate them into my business in some way, but I don't know if I would let somebody else's leader run my team. So I can imagine that's it. Now I'm going to go back to a statement you made too, that when you first said, "Hey, let me go give it a shot in the dealership," your father put you in sales. I love that. And you and I were talking about, like, my business model is with Spinwheel. When I originally created it, I wanted to have everybody in my company, no matter if they want to do a marketing role, they want to do development role, everybody needs to start in my company and start in sales. I believe that it's a thing that it instills something special within you, life lesson that it gives you. And the way I teach sales is, for people who work in my organization, is it's a foundational skill set that works with you throughout that process. For you, in your father's eyes, when he decided to put you in sales, was it for a similar reason? Is that's kind of the foundation of the dealership, or that just maybe more aligned with your skill set or your personality at the time?
No, it was 100%. Like, if you're going to do this, you have to start to sell cars. Like, that's just, it's, there was no question. There was no debate. Like, I kind of joke that he didn't know where the sale or the service department was, because it was 100% sales in his mind. And in fact, when I was going through the NADA program, you know, you would do a different week in every department. And so when I got to the parts department or the service department, and I was spending all my time back in those departments trying to learn them, because that's what I'm going through with school, he would get mad at me. And he was upset, and he would pull me back and say, I need you to come and appraise this car right now. And I'm like, but Dad, I'm on the service drive writing up work orders right now. Nope, you're getting up in the sales department. I need you to come up here. And you know, he would pull me from wherever I was to come and get involved in the sales department.
I bet if I don't know your father, I've never met your father, but I would bet based off of that, your father was probably always the best salesman in every one of his stores, right? There was never a guy that was a better salesman than your father in that store, right?
No, and he was the guy that we had a big like round showroom up at the front, and you know, in the 80s it was amazing. No, it was a little dated, but that's okay. But anyway, we had a round showroom. We had a big tower right in the middle of it, and that's where he lived. I mean, if he wasn't sitting or standing at that tower, he felt completely out of place. And
yeah. It's interesting.
Yelling, there's an up out there. Go out there. There's customer. You got to do this.
Interesting. I was recently working with an automotive group out in California. I was building an outsourced BDC for them over the past year, and the owner he's in his 80s. I originally was introduced because I was considering working with them, and they invited me out to their house where they house all of their general managers in a version of a 20 group meeting at their house, and their family serves all of their leaders, and then they come to the corporate office the next day, and then they do a general managers meeting. And so I was invited to attend and watch how they worked as an organization before agreeing to work with them and building them a team. That 80-year-old man, there was not a single person in that office or in that headquarters that was more energetic, more passionate, more spry, who believed in his process more than anybody else. And it was so inspirational. Just watching him and what he built. They started off, Katie, as a one store in Northern California, and they grew to now they have over 30 stores based in California, but they've extended past that. For some of you guys that know me and know the business well enough, you could probably put the piece together in regards to maybe what automotive group this is based off of the explanation of the owner, who he is. But man, he was incredibly aspirational. It's awesome to see those guys who've been in the business for so long that still have so much energy for it so long, because I deal with owners who've been founders for 2 years and they're just spent. 2 years in, they are spent.
It's over it, yeah.
You see those guys that live, breathe the industry, the business, and all of that. It's just so refreshing. I assume, just based off of what you're saying, your dad had a lot of that in him too.
No, he was that. In fact, you know, he was there until he got so sick, we actually had to, you know, pull him out of there. But that was, I mean, he had the one store, and I always asked him, why did you never expand? You could have. And he said, I always had so many opportunities, but he just loved that he loved that place. Like, that was his home. And I don't think that man missed a day of work at all. And he was there day in and day out until he couldn't be there anymore. So
since you made the decision to move on from that Kia dealership and the offer that came your way, that mind-blowing conversation that happened at the end of that dinner, most of that conversation came to fruition, right? You ended up selling the location, you took on a couple offers, you found a great partner, and then you went to go work for that organization who helped you first find the property and then sell the business as well. How's that process gone since you made that transition into that side of the business?
Yeah, so that was in 22. I think we closed the dealership March 31st. We took about 2 months off and went and just traveled. We just needed to kind of have a little bit of a reset after everything.
Yeah. Where's your favorite place you went to?
Favorite place I went to, that's a great question. I have to say it was Berlin. We were all over. We did a cruise like Turkey to Athens, and then we went to France, and then up to Germany, and all over the place. And yeah, Berlin, I think it was actually one of those places where I wasn't really sure that's where I wanted to go, but you know, you just kind of pick a random spot on the map. Yeah. And I think it's actually been now it's my number one favorite city I've been to. So
that's awesome. Perfect.
I
Yeah.
encourage you to
My
go
wife
if you
and I
never
do
been.
a lot of, want to do more traveling and have done more recently over the past many years. I've had a little bit more flexibility within my schedule. And that's something that we've been talking a lot about, which is really just kind of asking everybody, where's the favorite place you've been? What's the things
Yeah.
that you've done and gone to? And so
Yeah,
perfect.
I
All right.
just found it a very progressive city. It was nice, and then just the history with the wall and what was going on there
Sure.
was crazy. So,
Yeah. Sorry, I
yeah,
cut you off.
but yeah, no. So we took a couple months off. We traveled. We came back. Officially started with DSMA in I think it was June that year. Worked up in. We were still in Toronto at the time, and we had talked about coming down and starting a Western office. So it made sense. They wanted to expand to the US. They already had offices in Florida and Chicago. And so they kind of wanted to hit up Western US. And just me being from Denver, it kind of made more of a fit. Ideally, they wanted us to go to Denver, and it just wasn't right at the time for
Right.
me. I had just lost my brother, and my dad was also very sick, and he had to pass kind of shortly after that. And so it was just one of those where it was just too tough to be in Denver at the time. So anyway, we looked at, going to Arizona, and then it was California. We knew we wanted to be somewhere warmer. We were tired of the cold and the gray and the snow. And ended up settling on Vegas, which is interesting because I was so sick of Vegas. I couldn't stand the city anymore because it was just every NEDA conference and
Oh,
20
yeah.
group and Kia
Yeah.
meeting and Ford meeting. I mean, you're just here for everything. And I'm not, I don't know, I'm not the biggest gambler, and you kind of just get tired of it. So it's funny that we did end up here. But we picked it because it had warm weather, it had golf, and it had an airport that we could travel to
Yeah.
wherever we needed to go.
Makes sense.
And so that was kind of a funny story because we got in with DSMA. We were doing some deals in the US. We had some deals going in Canada. We have a lot of connections, obviously, up there. So that was really going well for us. And it kind of came down to, okay, it's time to get down to the US. We came down, it happened again, another quick, just light switch moment for us. We came down in, I think it was November, to look at houses. We looked at maybe 6 across the city. Found one we liked, bought it, and moved down here by January. So it's like,
I,
that was a whirlwind.
my wife and I had a similar scenario like that. And this was actually before my wife and I were even married. And I had to move from Virginia down to Augusta, Georgia for a business that I had. And they basically called me with like a week and a half notice. Like, we need you down here. And so my wife and I, we secured an office space for us. We secured an apartment. This was, I had like a subsegment, like a franchise of a business that I was running. I named my business Coastal Marketing because I thought Augusta, Georgia was on the coast of Georgia.
Right.
And that's how little I knew about where I was going. And so we just get in a U-Haul. We pack our little bit of possessions we had at that time into a U-Haul, and we just head down there. And it ended up being the best scenario. Our office was a mile away from our apartment, which was a mile away from our stores that we were going to be working at. It was like a perfect scenario. We landed there day one. It just, everything checked every box. And it was just 9 months. The next 9 months of us being there was like everything you wanted to happen happened the exact way. And it's just, I fundamentally believe, I'm a faithful person. I fundamentally believe that when you just go away from overthinking and you just dive into what you think is right and just go that direction, that things will happen. And that's exactly what happened when we headed down to Augusta. So it sounds like similar to you.
That's amazing. And it is. I mean, it's one of those where we got down here and we've just instantly fell in love with it. We've the connections we've made, the community's been amazing. I mean, I like the hot weather, so it doesn't bother me at all. My golf game's gotten a lot better than it was. And and I'm with you on that. Like we have the saying, and I mean a lot of people say it, everything happens for a reason. And I've always said, like, if anything comes out of this whole situation, it was that it got us to Vegas, because I truly believe this is where we were meant to be.
It is interesting. And man, there's so much freeing that goes into that mindset too. And I know that it's hard to tell somebody, just have that mindset, relieve all of your stress and overthinking, and just trust that whatever happens to you. I mean, I had a scenario where I had this major client about 6 months ago that we were kind of like just not meshing well. This was probably 80% of my income was coming from this client. And I was thinking, hey, I don't know if it's going to work out much longer. And one of my top employees came to me and was like, Matt, how are you so calm about it? I'm like, well, I'm a firm believer that if this client goes away for a reason, it's only because it's preparing me for the next thing that's going to be even bigger and better and more aligned with what I'm trying to do. There's so much freeing in that. And I try to tell everybody, do this, have this mindset, but you either have faith or you don't, and you either believe or you don't. And you can tell somebody how beneficial this mindset is to them, but they've got to kind of, come to that realization themselves. Now that does lead into what you did with them at DMSA. Obviously, it's really, I want to talk a little bit about the landscape of kind of the dealership world and what we see the trends happening in automotive industry. But I also want to make sure that we get into what you're also putting a lot of your focus and passion in now around Drive Her Forward. So before we get to Drive Her Forward, I'd love to know, now that you're on the other side of the acquisitions and merger side, are you coming to it with like different glasses on now, or do you see it a different way, or is it just seeing what you already saw, but from a different position?
I think all the above, really. It's, it's one of those where, like, I think I told you, like during COVID and after we sold and everybody was on the buying spree and paying, top dollar for anything and everything that they could acquire. I always kind of questioned, and I just said, the automotive is very cyclical. Anybody who's been around it long enough knows this, that it's going to come full circle. I said, this is a wave and it's going to crash eventually. It's got to crash. And it wasn't crashing. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe I am the crazy one. And then we're in the crash right now. Like it has happened. Yeah. So we kind of got in right at the end. I want to say the tail end of the craziness where, DSMA was coming off record years of they broke all kinds of records because everybody was buying and selling at the time. And so, it naturally you're like, yeah, I want to get into this. This makes perfect sense. And then the market kind of started to slow down and you're seeing a correction. So what was a seller's market is now flipped and it's back becoming kind of a buyer's market. You're seeing a lot of those people that did ramp up and just buy anything that they could get their hands on. They are now recalling us and saying, hey, listen, maybe I made a mistake. All the money I thought I was going to make from this transaction is not happening. In fact, they're losing money. And what you'll see is, my husband talks about this, people would buy certain franchises and they're kind of like dirt under your fingernail kind of franchises. Like you have to get in and work these stores. It's not just it's not a Toyota store where you can just unlock the door and open it up and you're going to have people come in and buy cars. You actually have to come in and work it and sell and do that. And I think that's kind of where some of that is missing in this. The other trend is that dealers are aging. I want to say the average dealer anymore is 79, 78 years old. And the kids are not wanting to take over as much as, they used to or wanted to back in the day. So you're starting to see a lot of the kids go, like we were talking earlier, into the AI section or, whatever. They're all into the computers or something different. Running a car dealership is not necessarily their number one priority. So you are seeing these dealers that are aging out and have to kind of look at alternative ways for succession planning. And then the groups are coming in. They were on a slowdown. They kind of ramped up for a bit. They were slowing down for a while. And now you're starting to see them resurface again, because I think these prices and the mentality is coming back to reality a little bit with the expectations of what these dealers are thinking that they're going to get for their stores.
Yeah, I mean, I think of, man, the good operators can scale really well. The good operators can add. I think the weak operators have been exposed over the past many years. I mean, anybody could have made money in 2020. Anybody could have made money in 2020. They were making more money than they knew what to do with, and being bad operators at doing it. We joked earlier about, like, when you look to acquire the Kia brand earlier, it's like, was it the right brand to acquire at that time? I mean, good news, it wasn't a Saturn at that time, right? Because that was at the end of the Saturn run. And I think that we've got a couple of brands that are in jeopardy of being at the end of their run. I mean, I think we looked at Nissan in the past 12 months and it's just like tough times to be a Nissan dealer. I mean, it's tough times to be a Stellantis dealer right now. If you run a CDJR store, it's tough times. I mean, even make the argument that some Ford stores, I mean, you come from a Ford background, it's significantly different market on Ford to where you see the Kia, the Volkswagen, the Hyundais, those notoriously not strong brands have significantly more strength in the marketplace today. And so, I mean, I look at it and what I've seen from an outside looking in as a guy who's been on the vendor side, I've just consistently seen those small mom and pops, which were my bread and butter on the vendor side, going away completely, finding those mid-sized tier groups are buying them, and then the regional groups are buying them, and then these corporate groups are buying them, and these public groups are buying. It's just like there's just the big are eating the big, and when you have that global infrastructure and process really helps you around that side. Do you envision, and maybe this isn't your forte, but do you envision a brand like Nissan or Mitsubishi going away in the next 24 months?
So it's interesting you say that because, we've done a lot of Nissan deals, there's a lot on the market for Chrysler is another big one. Mitsubishi, not as much. We've had a few of the deals with them. Those have just been a struggle of trying to find the right buyer. And if you find a buyer, then the OEM with their approval has been a challenge. So that I don't know about Mitsubishi. That one's kind of
with Mitsubishi. With Mitsubishi, what I've always thought of is when you've got that decent used car dealer, that volume used car dealer who wants to get in the franchise place, I feel like Mitsubishi is like the most obvious, like get in the franchise game with the Mitsubishi store and then scale after that. Is that kind of the common play?
Well, it's interesting. Yeah, yes, you would think that. And that's kind of how we've approached a lot of them. But then you do bring actually who we felt was a qualified buyer, and the OEM is not accepting them as, I mean, it's happened a couple times now where they are flat out. And I've had veteran dealers begging for a Mitsubishi franchise to put into an empty building and they refuse to do it. So it's I can't speak for them because I don't know. I don't understand it myself, but with, the Chryslers and the Nissans, for example, those have been a big challenge, but you're also kind of seeing the wave kind of turn a little bit as well. So, where we had our noses up at Kia, I think people are seeing those franchises as they will eventually turn them around. And so get in when the price is, low, buy low, sell high. And I think that's kind of their mentality. So you actually are seeing a little bit of an uptick right now. And there are also ones that are your first time buyers or your, used car guys that want to get into the franchise game, and they're having a little bit more success than maybe a Mitsubishi right now.
Yeah, I think it's all about innovation in the model lineup. I mean, look at Nissan, and like Nissan was so strong for so many years because of the cars that they had. But we're not in a car market anymore. We're in a truck market, an SUV market, and that the Maxima and the Ultima just don't play anymore, and they're not competitive in the truck game. And you look at CDJR, and they just, I mean, Jeep is strong. They always have been. They always will be, and they have a place, but they're just not innovating right now that makes you just get excited about what they do. I mean, if they recharge the Charger, if they recharge the Challenger, if they recharge some of those iconic brands that they have under their umbrella, that I think they could do well. They just not doing anything.
And the dealers aren't happy. I mean, the manufacturer aren't taking care of the dealers, and I mean, it's product too, but it's also them, and they're not inspired to be better than all they do is get the grind from the OEM to sell more, and it's like, okay, but it starts from the top. We need your collaboration here to help us here.
I was willing to put a decent amount of money on this. I'd be interested to see what you think about this, and then we'll move on from this side and go to the other topic we want to talk about. Mm-hmm. I was about 80% sure around 2021 that the OEM saw enough evidence that they could remove 80% of the dealers from the landscape and they could sell direct to consumer in the Tesla model because of what they saw with the direct to order process that they were allowed or having to do with the lack of manufacturing during COVID. Yeah. And I'm surprised that they've gone back to the dependency on dealers and less of the direct brand to consumer online approach without the dealer being involved. I'm surprised that they haven't moved more towards that direction. Do you see a pathway to that? And did you kind of also see that potentially happening? And is it still there, or have you never even paid attention to that part?
No, I did, and I don't know a ton. I know Ford was trying to go through that route when the Mach-E came out, and so that was kind of their model was, every dealer was going to maybe get three, but you weren't ever really getting them because they were selling them direct to the consumer, and they had all the orders and everything, and that turned into, that was kind of right at the end of when we were getting out of it. But from what I recall, it was just messy. Like it really just didn't make a lot of sense, and it seemed like it was more confusing for the customer and for us and for Ford themselves than it was to just kind of do business status quo. I think
I just see with Ford, I also saw like the fast lane growth being the answer to that. We get rid of the storefront. Fast lane still services the service drive. We sell our cars frontline direct to consumer. We still have our fast line facilities for the service side, which is the benefit to a lot of the dealerships, which is the variable ops side or the fixed ops side. That's what I kind of looked at and saw, especially on Ford.
Well, and no, for sure. But I think the other thing too that I was going to say is you have your franchise laws, and you have 50 different states with different laws. You have the NADA that are, championing this whole movement. So I just don't think it's going to be as easy as they think it is to go, okay, well, we're just going to flip the light switch and remove all you and start selling them direct to consumer, because I don't think that that's going to work. I think they are seeing that there is a need for it. And that was, to be quite honest, one of the things that we sat back when we sold Kia. We saw a presentation from the Canadian Dealer Association, and it was very, very doom and gloom. Let me tell you, I don't think there was anything positive in this presentation about, why you want to be a car dealer in the next 10 years, because we were all going away and it was all this. And, we're still here. And I think that's one thing that I will say is dealers are resilient, and they always figure out a way to make it work. And I've seen it, I've done it, and we're in a major transition right now with the AI movement. It's changing daily, and I gotta commend them because they do figure it out.
It is commendable. And look, the reality is the used car space will never go away fully. Even if we do direct new cars direct to consumers, the still is going to be the strong are going to survive in the space for sure. And I'm very interested to see what happens in the next 10 years, because I've seen some of those older principles that have just been stuck in their ways, that are allergic to marketing, that are allergic to innovation. And then you see some of these other companies that, man, they've got that younger generation who's come in and really, really knows how to navigate the world when it comes to that. I want to be as respectful of your time as possible. And really the thing I wanted to talk with you about, which I think you and I could talk business of car dealerships for a while, which is, I would say, your job and what you're doing day in and day out is DMSA, right? You're a partner there. You help run a facility and an office there. But I would say what your passion right now is drive her forward, right? Would I be accurate in that kind of breakdown of what your passion is? Tell me a little bit about Drive Her Forward, what you do, and then why you came up with it.
Yeah, so Drive Her Forward is a platform where I really want to help, ambitious women lead by providing them with tools and structure to help create success on their own terms. So what does that mean, and why did I build it? Basically, when I was running the dealerships and going through my whole career journey, I'm a female in a very male-dominated industry. One, just being female, and two, being a high-level leader, it gets lonely at the top, and it gets tough. So this was something that I wanted my whole career journey, and I kind of took a step back at the end of last year and said, I think I want a change in my life, and what can I do, and how can I help others? Men, women, whatever. But I came up with Drive Her Forward to do that. So this is a platform built for women leaders or women who are looking to grow and are striving to be better than where they are today. And this is, I built a community really for women to come in and join and help support each other through their journey. So, I don't want this to be just a platform where we get on and kind of tell our sob stories and complain or be a victim of our circumstances. It's here's what I'm struggling with today, whatever it may be, and can you help me be better than I am? And with everybody's different backgrounds and their experiences, we're collectively doing that. I've got an amazing group of women right now. We had a call the other day, and I would say that one of the biggest challenges that they're struggling with, in the month of December. In fact, I started the call thinking I was going to go one direction, and this seemed to be a reoccurring trend as we were talking, was these women are just trying to be all things to all people all the time. And this is a challenging month for them with the holidays and everything. And they're trying to be the best employer, the best leader, or the best parent or daughter, wife, or you name it. They're trying to be all things to everybody, and it's really just becoming a grind for them. So that was their outreach this month on, what can we do and how can we manage. And some are going through divorces and they don't have their kids full time, and help me navigate this. What do I do? And it's just a great way for these women to go there. Then I'm also have online courses, and I am doing some one-on-one coaching. And I really want to bring frameworks and tools to elevating these women. So how to be ambitious yet lead and know what you're doing. Like, I don't know, I guess, how do I want to say this? Like, what's your executive presence? How do you look? Do you realize that when you enter a room, how you walk in, people are already, making judgments about you, which good, bad, or indifferent, it is what it is. So walk in with the most confidence that you have. How to ask questions in the boardroom and not sell yourself short or apologize for asking because you have a question. We all have questions. So, just own it and ask it, and don't feel sorry about it or limit yourself. I really just want these women to know that imposter syndrome is real. We're all feeling it. You're not by yourself. But here are the tools to get past it, and it's a muscle. It's like everything else. We go to the gym, and the first, admittedly, I haven't been there in a while. So when I do get back, it's going to be, you got to start over, essentially. You got to start light and build yourself up and work those muscles until they're trained properly. So is this, so is your boardroom presence. So is, your confidence. So is negotiating a deal. How do you negotiate a deal? Nobody really taught me that, and it's something you just kind of learn as you go through the car business. So
do you think, Katie, and I don't think there's a wrong answer here, but I'm interested to know what your thought is. Do you think that negotiating a deal is different for a man than a woman in most cases?
Sorry, you cut out. Can you?
Yeah, sure. Do you think that negotiating a deal is different for a man and a woman in most cases?
It's an interesting question. I think it depends on the person. Actually,
The person delivering the message or receiving it, or both?
well, both. I think, and I'm certainly a victim of it. I've done it where I'm not confident in what I'm doing, and I think that portrays into what you're negotiating. So, I have gone into dealers and they have intimidated me, and I softened myself, and I didn't come in as strong as I probably could or should have. Whereas, if I do go in and I know just, go in like Wonder Woman or whatever you need to do and go in with the confidence and do it, I find that the outcome is much different and they're more receptive.
The way I perceive it myself, and once again, I only can view it from my lens, right? And I've always been a fairly self-confident, probably overly self-confident for my background in different settings. I'll walk in, I've always just had a natural level of self-confidence. And I think that man or woman, I think that the communication of your confidence is the biggest differentiator. And I think that if you believe that because you're a man or because you're a woman, you're walking in with a disadvantage, I believe you will have a disadvantage because you believe that.
Yeah.
No different than when I was young in my career, I was lucky to elevate into a high level of leadership at a very young age. And I had people that I was in my late 20s that I was managing people in their 50s and 60s. And that also could have been a disadvantage to me if I allowed myself to be handicapped by that. For me, that's the way I always try to think, is just try to be as strong as you can, man or woman, young or old, everybody has advantages, everybody has disadvantages, but control what you can control in those scenarios. So essentially, if somebody wanted to be a part of your network, you run like weekly, monthly calls? Is it like a Zoom call? What's the setting and
Yeah,
how it
so
would
right now it's basically it's a monthly call. I want to grow it. Once we get
okay.
more community members, then I kind of want to come into like we'll have one big monthly call, but then I want to do sub calls. So if we
Yeah.
have a certain topic, if we want to talk about, you know, the imposter syndrome or negotiation or whatever, then we can, you know, host that at one point in time. But yeah, it's you know, a monthly reoccurring kind of thing that, you know, you subscribe and you're part of it. But then there's a whole platform. So you don't have to wait for the call to come in and say, hey guys, I am struggling with this today. Is there something you can help me with? And the community can come out and say, yes, do this, or here's my experience, or here's what I suggest, you know?
Where do you host the community on? Like I put a lot of my training and videos I do for my internal team, plus for clients, I host it on a school channel, which has a community aspect. Do you have something like that?
So I'm using Kajabi right now. So
Okay,
it's
perfect.
all through Drive Her Forward, but yeah, with Kajabi is
Cool.
my platform. Yeah.
So what I'll do is I'll make sure I get all of that information and we'll put it in the bio. We'll make sure that we can share with them on that. If there's something specific, like a message you would have for a person who's kind of ideal to join that group for you right now, what would that profile of that individual be for you right now?
So I think that profile is just any woman who is you know, either struggling with her current leadership role or her current role in general. You don't have to be, you know, a leader or a CEO of any company to be a part of this. You know, I have women that, you know, own their own companies. I have women who are running large dealer groups. I have women that are, you know, just a manager at an HR firm, you know, so it's all that. And I'm looking to, I have a couple daughters, as a matter of fact, you know, their fathers I have connections with, and they want to get their daughters in, which I think is fantastic because, you know, at 26 years old to be in the room, so to speak, with some of these women, I would kill for.
Who do you have to be? I mean, get at any age. I got a 5-year-old daughter. I can send her to the next
Well,
call.
yeah. I'm not sure that that's really the market we're going for, but yeah, you know, I mean, it's just somebody who's looking to elevate themselves and looking for personal growth. You know, I think the true essence of Drive Her Forward is, you know, you want to make a change, you want to do something, you're going to go out and you're going to do it. You know, I have this lady who she is developing an AI software platform, and I have to tell you, you know, she's worked under her brother, and she's done this, and she finally got to a point and said, you know what? I'm just going to do it myself. And like, that is 100% of what Drive Her Forward is.
Awesome.
We're not going to sit and say, oh, we're in this male dominated industry and it's so tough or anything else. No, we're going to go out and we're going to make it happen ourselves, and we're going to figure out a way.
Yeah, I'll tell you, and my final words on this, and I'll leave it for you for final words after this. As a guy who's built multiple sales teams in the automotive space over the past 10 plus years, and most of my teams have been mostly women. Because I do a lot of outbound outreach calls, and I believe there's an advantage in the type of sales that I lead to be able to have some of the personality traits and skill sets that generally women have over men. I've also noticed that in calling into these dealerships, to your point, it's 9 out of 10 of the leaders that you run into, probably even larger of a number than that, are men. But it's undeniable when you see a woman in that space, how undeniably impressive she is. It's almost 100% time. And so often you'll see so many doofuses that are men in those places, but you'll almost never see a complete doofus that's a woman in those places. So I've always noticed how that for a woman to navigate that landscape in those stores and in those areas, it takes somebody who's almost always incredibly impressive. And that's something I've always paid attention to. So keep fighting that fight. I support it. I love that side of it. Before we go, Katie, any final words for our audience?
No, just thank you. Like, I really want to make a difference. I mean, those women, I agree with you. And, for as amazing as they are and how powerful they are, I know that they're not going to maybe show it, but they are struggling. And that's what this platform is for, so that they have an opportunity to come out, because they're not going to go to their male sales manager or whatever and say, hey, I'm having a rough day. Can this is the space for them to kind of have their outlet and ask for help and guidance. So,
Yeah, and as I heard you say that too, Katie, I mean, one thing that popped in my head is that old saying is like do the job you want, not the job you have. And what I also see a huge platform and opportunity for your community is not just the people who are sitting in those leadership seats, but more importantly, the women who want to be sitting in those seats. Because having the mentors there that are in those seats that can tell you how to help them navigate into those seats. The power of a network is, there's nothing more powerful in business, and to have a network of people who can mentor and show you how to walk that path is incredibly impressive. And I thank you for putting that together for women in the space, because I know they need something like that and an outlet for that. So for all of you guys that are listening that know somebody who would service by this, and Katie, you had mentioned, we talked a lot about automotive today, but this is definitely not an automotive only women's leadership group. It is any type of leadership in any type of industry that's there. So if you guys know somebody who would be benefited by be a part of somebody as impressive as Katie is as a leader, and the other women that they have in there, then I'll put all of the information on how to join and get connected and hopefully be able to help within that. For all of you else that are watching and listening, I would ask, as I always do, just share, comment, like. The more we can get this content out in front of more people, the better, and more people we can help. So until next time, Katie, thank you for your time, and everybody else will talk soon.
Appreciate it.